The phrase is scrolling for a reason. We're not pausing and going 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. No, you can tell immediately or you can't.
Like, you don't have to become a personality. You already are a personality. You just have to reveal that to everybody that's watching.
And it's not just this supermodel, it's everyday people who live lives like I do, who don't have bajillions of dollars and personal trainers and chefs and, all of that, but
Welcome back, Wealthy Creators, for another episode of the podcast. Here today, I have a special guest, Giselle Ugardi.
You got it.
All right, I said it right. She told me Giselle Ugardi like a party, and so that made me remember it. Thank you for coming. Thank you for taking the time out. I know you're here for a conference in town, and you've been really busy. So I just appreciate you again taking that time and coming to sit with me today.
I'm excited to fill the time with you, and I hope that we can really pour into everyone listening and that you pull something from today and you're not just listening, but you'll actually take something from this conversation and execute.
Absolutely.
I want to see those receipts, not like the receipts of buying stuff from me, but like the receipts of implementation.
Absolutely.
And I hope this inspires someone today.
Absolutely. And I think this one is going to be a little special one for me because as the producer of the Ryan Panetta Show and the Wealthy, brand, I get to talk to an actual producer that studied it and went to school for it and has done it at a high level. And so for me, I'm from the school, the University of YouTube.
Yeah.
Right. And so a lot of what I've learned has kind of been self-taught or experience. Granted, I believe that is YouTube University is still a great place to learn.
That's
things.
Where I went too.
But I do know you have some technical. So talk about just your start getting into the space.
Absolutely. I went to college and I wanted to study journalism because it was my dream that I wanted to pursue entertainment news. I wanted to be an entertainment TV host. Mm-hmm. And part of going to the school that I went to was you needed to learn how to be a backpack reporter, which means like you need to learn how to do it all. You need to be a one-man band. And someone even gave me the advice when I was still in school. And he said, you know what, learn how to do a little bit about everything. Mm-hmm. Like learn just a little bit about everything. Learn everything in and around what you do, especially as the talent, because then those around you, if you are seeing someone who they make it look so easy, but you know how hard it is, you're able to offer praise in a way that someone else might not really understand. And also you're able to call it out when someone is making excuses or complaining or not doing it right. And be able to be like, what are you doing? Yeah. That's not okay. Yeah. And it definitely made me stand out in that I wasn't just someone who could stand tall and pretty and read a script. I knew all the different components of what it took to put something together. And you mentioned YouTube University. So when I went to school, even though I went to school for journalism, I never took a class on production. It was a lot of like volunteering at the local news station. I was telling Austin yesterday that my first internship, like legally, I don't even think it was an internship. I don't think it was legal at all because like internships were not really a formal thing back then. I worked at a morning radio show for an iconic radio host, Tony Fly, in Minneapolis. And I just showed up one day watching, like I just wanted to be able to see it. And I knew someone who worked for the show and I made myself useful and asked if I could come back the next day. And then I just kept coming back and kept coming back and kept coming back at 3:00 in the morning. I didn't have a car. I had a job. I was going to school. And my brother, I wouldn't say steal, but I would borrow his car from 3 to 9 o'clock without him asking or knowing. And then by the time he had to go to work, it was like, okay, do. And he eventually figured it out. But, so, and then I eventually like saved up to buy a used camera. I had like different places that I would work as a writer, a producer, any job I could get, any internship, any volunteer. And of course, like YouTube University, which YouTube back then was not what it is now. There were a few different places where I could look up editing, but a lot of it back then was early YouTube vloggers just sharing what they were doing, saying, hey guys, like maybe it was a beauty vlogger. This is the studio that I use. These are the lights that I use. This is the table, the backdrop, the microphone that I use. This is the camera that I use. And we were all learning from each other and learning from making mistakes. I wish so badly that my early YouTube videos were still online, but I was so self-conscious that I took them down.
You took them down?
I have some of them that are like 10, 11, 12 years. 13, I think, might be the oldest one.
Okay.
I wish I had the first one. I still remember it to this day. It was so out of focus, but I didn't know the difference.
Right.
You know, like now everything's like 4, 5, 6, 12, 25K
Yeah.
and, you know, like HD, whatever. But like back then it was like, I don't know, like, is this right? Like I didn't know how to
Who knows?
focus, autofocus, any of that stuff. And that's how I learned, was just putting in the time, putting in the reps, making all of the mistakes, doing it imperfectly, making the cringe videos.
Mm-hmm.
Like so cringy. My voice was like 10 octaves higher. My skin was so orange. I was trying to get every single word perfect. I had no personality. Like it was awful.
It's rough. It's rough coming up. And really, one thing you said too that really stood out to me is that even though you were going for journalism, like you were volunteering in places.
Yeah.
And I think like now, because of the landscape of media, everybody comes into it with a price on it.
Always.
And so really what happens is that they're not able to make the mistakes that you made and that I made early on. Because I think we're around the same age. I'm 34. I'll be 35 in September. Yeah. And it was like, I started off just volunteering for the church. Mm-hmm. And my sister ran a dance group. And so they would put on concerts once or twice a year. And I would bring cameras. I would run audio. I mean, I can vividly remember. It still haunts me, like the CD skipping during their dance, like, and starting it over and then starting the cameras over and trying to do it all. And so it's like, I remember all those things, making all those mistakes early. So it's very easy to recognize when something's wrong today.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Now, I mean, like you mentioned Austin, you know, you got a 16-year-old coming in with a salary on what he's doing. And so their experiences are happening, like they're making the mistakes, but they don't get the leash that we got because of the volunteering experience.
Well, and I do think that there are a lot of opportunities in front of us that we also didn't have back then. Whereas before you needed somebody to give you a shot.
Yeah.
Now everybody has their phones. Mm-hmm. Like it is so accessible.
Yeah.
And you can start from zero and you can find people who will take a chance on you still. But I do feel like in some ways there's even a little bit of a level of entitlement of like thinking that like, you know, your time from day zero is worth something. And I think there's a balance, you know, like you want to be able to appreciate those who are putting in time with you. At the same time, like if I could go back, there are some experiences that I might have gotten paid $0 or not that much. I would have paid for those opportunities. Mm-hmm. And as long as you are learning, invest that time, money, energy, if you can, and find a way, because it's never been easier to do that. And how cool there are all of these resources and for free to be able to learn.
No,
like it's the way of the future. Like the opportunities now for someone who's a creative, a lot of people are being like, oh, like AI is killing it and da 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 da. AI is not going to replace you. A human who knows how to use AI to be more efficient and how to connect deeper, that's the human who's going to replace you.
And I want to get into that. I just don't want to rush it.
Yeah, I don't either.
Because the AI conversation is another conversation that I have on the other side. So I have like entrepreneurs and business owners that I coach, but I also have individuals that are on this side of the, you know, the business that are like in the creative space that are extremely worried about this whole AI thing. I know it's a tool, but trying to express that and explain that, we're going to talk about it. So,
we will.
So as far as like, you know, you talked a little bit about going from like basically the consumer side to the producer side, but was that always in the plans for you? Did you grow up wanting to be a producer and wanting to?
No, it really wasn't. And definitely if you're listening, we're going to get into a lot more, and it's not just going to be the editing, the tactical. Like we're going to talk about some of the mental and the emotional, because not a lot of people talk about that.
Yeah.
The confidence, the bravery, the courage that you have to have, and the resilience that you need to have, because I've fallen on my face and, as we mentioned, like made so many different mistakes. I don't even think I really knew what a producer was. And I don't think that I understood that I was looking at it from that sort of a lens. But as I mentioned, you know, a lot of my early experience was in journalism, whether it was doing hard news for the local news station or the school news station, or what I really wanted to do, which was entertainment news. And so when we look at the traditional that, like in actuality, news is the original short form video.
Yeah.
You watch the news. Yes, it's 30 minutes or an hour, but every single segment is 15 seconds for the tease, 30 seconds, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Like they're showing you exactly what you need to know in that moment. Or maybe it's the teaser for the whole Sunday hour-long Dateline special interview with whoever. And so I started to learn how to listen in sound bites. I learned how to listen in hooks before I knew what a hook was.
That's good.
I had to make sure that every single word counted because we were on a time crunch. It's not like we could just riff and have a jam session on a podcast for, an hour, 2, 3, 4. You could go back to it later. No, we have a live show and we have to be very strategic about what we hit in that hour. And it's possible that breaking news could happen. And the other thing that I learned in that moment too, so, people do not understand the power of repetition and of being concise. And if you watch, say, cable news or an hour news, like notice how every single time you tune in, they go breaking news. And it's the same shit. Every 15 minutes, every hour. Why is that? Let's think about this for a moment. And this is what it has to do with content. They know, and I worked in morning radio, morning news, entertainment news. They know that the average person is only listening for 10 to 15 minutes. They're listening or watching on their commute. They're listening or watching in transition while they're making dinner. They're picking up the kids from school. They know that they're only listening for that tiny increment of time. And then they're getting new waves of people. Are there people who are actually watching the entire thing and all day long and just totally filling themselves with a dumpster fire of what's happening in the world? Totally. But the average person is not doing that.
Right.
That's why you hear Taylor Swift's record on the radio every 15 minutes because they're not thinking of the person, the outlier who is actually paying attention every single minute. They're thinking of the average consumer and they want them to keep coming back. And so that's why to this day, you still get the weather every 15 minutes. You still get the traffic every 15 minutes. What do you mean? I have ways. People are still listening. And so it allowed for me to realize like, oh, wait a minute. I absolutely have to repeat my, what I call greatest hits or reintroducing myself or reintroducing my offering or my product or even the way that I'm reinventing myself because there are always going to be new people who are joining us or people who maybe weren't in the headspace where they were listening or they were distracted or they were double screening it, when you got your phone, your TV, whatever. And they're hearing different things at different times. And so if you're watching this like, oh, well, I already made that video. Oh, I already posted that. No, like post it 20 more times, post it next week, next month, because you're going to continue to evolve or maybe it's cringeworthy now, redo it again and talk about it again later.
Yeah, that's always my response to individuals that say, I've made it already. I don't know what to do. I don't know what content to make. Right. I always say that. I'm like, dude, like there's millions of people that haven't seen it. Right. Do it again. Do it again. Even for like what we teach, like we teach at Pineda Media, every time somebody comes in and films with us, for every body of content, we teach to do 2 hooks.
Right.
And they're like, why are we doing that? Like everybody at first is like, I don't understand. I was like, you do 2 hooks because those are 2 videos. So for every 15 videos, you have a month's worth of content to put out.
Absolutely.
Very easy and efficient in doing it, right? Well, they're like, well, I don't know. I go, tell me something. How often do you click on the person's page to go see their content? How often do you do that? And they're like, sometimes I do it. I was like, sometimes. I was like, now imagine how often you just scroll through your feed. I go, nobody sees your 2 videos consecutively. Like it just doesn't happen, right? Like that's not what they're feeding you. So you can remake the same video over and over again. And the only individuals that know that is people that actually go to your page and read and listen word for word every single video. And so it's just, it speaks to that, right? Like the news does it every single day.
All the time.
And they're still an existing business.
Every day. And I even say have 2 alternate endings.
Yeah.
You could do a short version and a long version. Or you could have one where it goes in one particular direction where maybe you have an opinion, another one that might loop back into the beginning of the video, if you can, and sometimes that is filming it in 2 variations. Sometimes it's just hitting the end bar, like pulling it in tighter, having a different place of where you end it because completion rate is the most important.
So what do you see as the biggest contrast between TV or radio and social media on the producer side of it, as a talent?
I don't see a difference.
Really?
I really don't see a difference, especially now. I believe that they are becoming one and the same because the watch habits are very similar. And even when I was working in radio, I was on a morning show in a big market. And this was at this point now 3-4 years ago. And people would say, oh, radio's dead. I listen to Spotify. I listen to podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that radio's dead. It's that now there are more options.
Mm-hmm.
So where we used to, back in the day.
I hate saying that, but it's true.
Back in the day, I'm doing a hair flip if you're listening to this. Back in the day, when you were in a car, you would have maybe 6 presets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Mm-hmm.
And those would be your options of what you were listening to on the radio. Now you have more, you can have 10 and whatever, but you had 6 presets. So in my mind, whether you don't literally have those 6 buttons anymore, you have in your head the top 5 places of where you're going to go. It might be your auxiliary cord. And wait, that just dated me too. Yeah. Gosh, did I really just say that? Yeah. What?
What's an auxiliary cord?
Right? It might be Spotify. It might be your favorite. And in Spotify, it might be a certain playlist that you have. Yeah. It might be a podcast. It might be a radio show. Mm-hmm. And that radio show, maybe you're listening to it on the actual radio. Maybe you're listening to it on Sirius XM. Maybe you're listening to it on satellite radio or on Spotify, where now morning shows are replaying their stuff. And really, if you think about it, radios were the original podcast.
That's right.
That's what that was.
Yeah.
Every hour, and they would kind of spit out the same thing, have different segments. And when it comes to TV, for example, I will watch TikTok, or personally, I prefer Reels now in the way that I used to prefer TikTok in 2020. Mm-hmm. I will watch it very similarly to how I used to watch TV when I would go from channel to channel. Now everything I have on TV is streaming, but I still have my go-to quote unquote channels, even though that's not what they're known for anymore. Mm-hmm. So maybe it is Netflix. Maybe it is a specific show or a specific series or a specific app, or it is Instagram. Those are just now new ways of seeing it. And that's something that people have been so resistant against, or thinking that it is 2 totally different beasts. But even if you pay attention to the people who are doing it right in TV right now, if you watch Netflix, you'll notice that the shows are pattern interrupting.
Okay. Tell me more.
Watch it. So yes, you'll have, some shows that feel a little bit more long dragged out, but you're seeing where it'll go, the camera will motion to something else, whether it is a different angle, or maybe the camera will shake a little bit, or it will go from one person to another person very quickly, or you won't see a jump cut per se, where you're trimming something down. But if it's a really dramatic moment, you will see very intentional camera angles, whether they are doing a very intentional, long, drawn out pause on someone, it might be a beautiful monologue of sorts, or you'll see a lot of motion and travel happening to keep your attention.
Yeah, I think that's what great directors and producers are doing now, is that they're paying attention to the habits of the viewer.
Yes.
Right. And so to me, it's all psychology.
All of it.
It's all psychology, right? I know that I have to create a really good hook when I do my social media post, because I only get about 3 seconds before somebody swipes, right? And
you don't get 3 seconds, you get 1 frame.
Yeah, it gets shorter. It gets shorter every month, right? It gets shorter and shorter every time we talk about it, right? But I know that I have to do something at the beginning of this video to make you stay and retain you for the rest of the video. Mm-hmm. I understand that, and I think that the best, the individuals that are doing it in TV still or in film, that's what they're doing. They're understanding that, right? I was watching, something on Netflix last night. And, now because I'm in this and I'm in the space, my wife hates watching stuff with me just because I talk about it so much. I was watching the movie, and a lot of times I'll watch the movie this is about to happen, this is about to happen. I tell her the rest of it. But I was telling her, and I was like, yeah, watch how they do this at the beginning of this movie. And she's like, I don't care. I was like, just watch. And she's like, Justin, I don't care. And I was like, but you're not understanding why you're watching it.
She's like, can you just let me enjoy it? Do we really have to untangle it? Can I just be fully That's why I watch trash television, but that's a totally different story.
Yeah, you just go total opposite.
That reminded me of something though, where, 2 things that you mentioned. You mentioned the 3-second thing. It's all the phrase is scrolling
Yep.
for a reason.
Yep.
We're not pausing and going 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. No. It's either you can tell immediately or you can't.
Yep.
That face looks familiar. Who is that? That title seems relevant to me. Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. That looks so yummy. Like, you know immediately, do I want to see more of this or do I not? And then if you actually do stay 3 seconds, then it's like, okay, cool. There's a stronger likelihood that you're going to stay. But even when it comes to reality shows that people are like, oh, it's trash. Oh, it's this. It's a storyline.
Right.
And even if they take forever to get to the point, because I do believe that we still have stronger attention spans. You just have to keep it. You have to attract it.
Got to earn it.
But they want you to be emotionally invested in something, or they want you to see yourself in them. And they want you to see someone who they love in them or someone who they hate in them. Unfortunately, a lot of your feeds and a lot of your recommendations are dumpster fires. They're toxic because you yourself, it's like you are virtually, self-sabotaging or hurting or mutilating yourself because you are just leaning into the things that make you feel horrible about yourself and catch yourself. Like, you mentioned the media is following the consumer. I do believe the media has a social responsibility that they're kind of messing up right now.
Yes, absolutely.
And also, you have more control than you think. If you are only seeing toxic hate, anger, check yourself. Check yourself. Like, are you throwing a match in there? Are you throwing gasoline on the flame? Are you the one who, I say that social media it's not sugar, it's not alcohol, it's not a cigarette. It's a refrigerator. You get to decide what is in that refrigerator. If you want to fill that up with alcohol and you want to binge drink every single night, that's on you why you feel hungover the next day. But my refrigerator is full of fruits and vegetables and water and like the occasional Oreo, the occasional pizza, but I am the one who's opening up the refrigerator and I'm doing it with intention. I'm going there when I'm hungry. I'm going there when I'm ready versus just opening it up. It is empty calories in there and I just keep on going over there because I'm bored. And the next thing you know, you're numb. And then no wonder you feel like shit about yourself because you are feeding into all of it. And then your real life reflects what that is.
And now we're going deeper too.
This
is going deeper because
this is social media church.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
You have a church background? Listen.
Church. We're going to call it social media
Take your
church.
seats.
No, I want to get into that too. And because I have my own experience with that, right? And I think this is a lot of people's experiences. Last year before last, I can remember when I had friends that are photographers. And I would like their posts. And some of them are filming like weddings. And then some of them are filming like the occasional model. It's Instagram. Right? And then one day I went on my page and I was swiping. And I just remember my wife's next to me. And I'm like turning my phone so she can't see it. And it wasn't because I didn't want her to know what I look at. It was just what was coming up. I shouldn't have been, like, that shouldn't be my feed.
Wow.
Right? And then knowing how everything works on the platform, it made me click over to my Explore page. And my Explore page was one BBL after another.
Damn.
And I was like, why are they sending me this?
Brazilian booty lift.
For those that don't know. Right? It's just a bunch of booty. Right? And so I'm like, why are they sending me this? And it was because I was liking my friends' photography, trying to support my friend. I'm liking their photography. Now, some people gonna call me a liar, but it's not. I'm being honest because I can appreciate beauty without it having to be my feed the whole time, right? And what you said is 100% right. It will make you numb to your real relationships. It will make you numb in real life, right? To where you're looking at the individual that's sitting across from you and you're not seeing their beauty because of what you've been fed. The standard, right? Like, and it's really like, it was a gross thing that social media can do on that side of it if you're not aware, right? So what I did to stop, I was like, I told him, I was like, look, I love you, bro. I love your work, but you won't see, support from me in that way. I just can't do it because I can't have it on here. I was like, and then I was like, all right, Justin, go like everything else.
Right.
Opposite of that.
Everything else.
And what I saw the next few days, things started to change.
Right.
Now I started seeing more basketball clips and I started seeing, right. And it's completely cleaned up. And so you do control what you see. You know, and so like again, like you want to test, you know, maybe you're single out there and you're dating and you want to test and see what your guy's into, or you want to test and see what your girl's into. Just ask to see that explore page. Ask to see what
For
they're looking at.
real.
It's gonna tell everything. It's
A-
gonna reveal it.
And even for you personally,
Yeah.
you want to
Tell
know
you
if you
about
have
yourself too.
you want to know if you have a healthy relationship with social media, go look at your explore page. Go browse your For You page and what are the first 5 to 10 accounts topics that come up? What does it say about you and the current condition of your life right now, or who you're surrounding
Yeah.
yourself? Because I love the Jim Rohn quote where he says that you are the average of the 5 people who you spend the most time with.
That's good.
And let me say that slower for the people in the back.
Yeah. That's
You
really
are
good.
the average of the 5 people who you spend the most time with.
Mm.
And that rocked my world when I was thinking about who I was physically spending the most time with, because the first time that I heard that quote, I was like, damn, nobody in this 5 is in my family. And I claim to be family oriented.
Mhm.
You know, no one in this 5, you know, they all look the same. They all look exactly the same. Like they all have the same job. They're all work people for me. You know, I'm like, there is no what, but I want to challenge you. The 5 people who you spend the most time with online, who are those people?
Mm-hmm.
Like not who do you enjoy following the most? Not who do you like the most? Not who's your favorite person who you follow? Who do you spend the most time with? Because it will absolutely shape and morph your brain. And what I hear a lot is that social media is toxic because it becomes this place of comparison and that it's creating irrational beauty standards. But I want to go to church really quick.
Come on.
And this is for guys, girls, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. But let me again flip my hair and say back in the day, before social media, the only standards that we had were TV and magazines. TV, we were limited to a certain amount of channels. Magazines, we were limited to a certain amount of those as well. And a lot of that was fake and touched up with not a lot of FTC guidelines that were telling us what was real and what was real. What I love so much about social media is that it has actually given me confidence, because for the first time in my life, I can see beauty in all shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
And it's not just this supermodel, it's everyday people who live lives like I do, who don't have bajillions of dollars and personal trainers and chefs and, you know, all of that. But, you know, for me, a few years ago, I had an autoimmune condition where my body was covered in hives. I couldn't wear makeup. I was injected with steroids from the doctor because they were just trying to get rid of the inflammation all over my body. I gained like 40 pounds in a very, very short period of time, which I'm 5'6". 40 pounds is like a world of a difference. And that was a body type that I just wasn't used to. Like, I don't care if you put on 5 pounds, 10 pounds, it doesn't matter. Whenever you gain or lose like a certain amount of weight, or whenever you look in the mirror and you don't recognize yourself, that can be like a really scary, drastic thing. And so I'm going through this and I'm like, damn, you know, usually I would post about going to the gym or putting my makeup on or the work that I was doing. And now all of a sudden I was not quote unquote perfect or to my best self standards. And none of my clothes were fitting and I had to dress for a new body type and I wasn't used to it.
Yeah.
It was social media that allowed for me to find very easily people who had different body types where I was like, damn, she looks great in a crop top. She's bigger than me and she's gorgeous.
Yeah, and
or
confident,
like,
yeah.
Right. Or like, she's not wearing any makeup. She has acne all over her face. Like, am I just going to not show up on social media until I pray that hopefully this goes away in the next couple of months, but maybe it never will? Am I just going to hide for forever?
Right.
Or am I going to start showing up in the way that right now, the people who I am seeing in real life, this is what they see. Like, they're seeing this person, like they're seeing this face. That's what they're seeing. And that's what it needs to be about. Is it's not about having the highlight reel or the perfect life. It's who is the person who I'm going to meet and see offline.
Yeah.
Who is that going to be? And maybe your hair is shorter or longer. Maybe you put on weight. Maybe you lost weight. You know, like your picture follows you everywhere these days. And the hope is that that person lines up with who I meet. Because, you know, as a content creator, if you're stuck in that space of I need to look perfect, or I need to have a certain body, or I have to have a certain amount of followers, or I have to be smart enough, I have to say every single word perfect. Hold up. Who would I see in person?
Yeah.
Like, who would I experience in person? What would your competence be like in person? What would your physique be like in person? Because if that's different, if that doesn't line up with who I see, then that is going to be what ends up losing trust because it feels like you're lying to me versus somebody who is comfortable in their own skin and who is comfortable having the experience or the lack thereof.
Yeah, I mean, people get really good at faking it, right?
Yeah.
Like they become professional frauds, right? Like they're professional at being a fraud on camera. And it's like, yeah, but that is so hard to sustain. Like that is the hardest thing to maintain, over time, right? Like, and I've, we see them, and I've been in rooms with them, and I'm like, oh, you're not actually that person that you present as, right? Like talking to you on a personal level, I get to really know. And it's just like, yeah, like you don't, there's no way to sustain it, truthfully, right? Like you go out. And one thing that you just said that really stood out is that the comparison, right? And I always say comparison kills anything, right? Like it can kill your confidence. It could kill how you feel about what other people think of you. Like it kills you inside mentally, right? And then so I always find it interesting when I hear other individuals say, well, if that person can do it, I can do it. And
That's the best way to think about it.
And I'm like, yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, like you should feel that way, right? Like you should feel that there's nobody, nothing that you can't do because of how you look or how you sound or even your education. Like there's some people online that are doing great business.
Mm-hmm.
The least education that you can think of, right? Like
Yeah.
if you talk to them long, you'll know like, okay, this person doesn't really know that much, but they're figuring things out as they go and it's working for them, right? That's all a part of like how you present yourself. And I always say video is going to reveal everything, right? Like you can't fake it. I can Photoshop myself. I give myself a nice thick beard. I can cover up a few of these grays that I'm starting to get out here at 34 years old. But it doesn't mean anything when you see me in person. It doesn't mean anything, right? And you're gonna look at it like, oh, he doesn't look like. And I know people can, testify to that, seeing a celebrity and be like, they look different in person, or he's smaller in person, right? That's all a part of this, right? And it will long term, it will read through video. And so I want to encourage anybody in our community or anybody that's listening or watching us, like be sure to understand who you are while you're on your journey. Like get to know yourself first. Right? Like you don't have to become a personality. You already are a personality. Right? You just have to reveal that to everybody that's watching and viewing. So again, I'm like really just affirming everything that you just said because you were so spot on with what the creator goes through. Right? And even imposter syndrome, like I've dealt with that myself, right? Like as I've grown in this space and actually started to gain a voice, like people are actually asking me on their podcast or asking me to speak on stage, like I question it over and over again, like, why me? Right? Like, I'm only doing, like, I'm learning too, right? Like, I'm nowhere near the D-Rocks of the world, or I'm nowhere near, like, I can name a ton of them that are doing it for these bigger influencers.
You are, by the way.
But, but it really does feel that way at times. And then somebody told me, well, you're doing everyone a disservice in your community if you don't give the information up or take the stage.
Exactly.
And by stage, he was talking about social media. He was talking about like in person. He was like, if you don't give up what you know, you're doing a disservice, right? Like, because somebody you're going to help, right? And you're going to help them and they're going to be able to scale and accelerate and their lives will get better. Their community can get better from it. And so I know there's a lot of creators dealing with that, right? What do you say to the individual that's just starting and they don't feel like an authority in the space?
If you don't have imposter syndrome, then you are either complacent or you're lying. I have worked with people who are, day zero, day one. I have worked with billionaires. And the one thing that everyone has in common is imposter syndrome. Because that means that you are doing something that you've never done before or that has never been done before. That means that you are doing something that is going to take you to the next level in some way, shape, or form. And if you don't have that, if there's nowhere in your life that you're not at least a little uncomfortable, if you claim to be so confident in every single area, then either you are complacent or you're lying. But here's the thing, like a lot of, I'm going to go ahead and say us because I've been there before. We don't even always realize that we're lying.
Yeah.
especially to ourselves.
Yeah. We've gotten good at it, right?
So good at it because like I can mind over matter the crap out of anything. And I then sometimes forget like, oh, wait, hold on. Maybe I've never, but also like I can mind over matter my way to believe a lot of things. And like the dumbest, funniest example was when I was younger, I think I was like 5'1" or something.
Okay.
And we were going to some carnival or one of those rides, and like you had to be 5'6" to be able to, get on, to participate in on the particular whatever. And so I remember I was wearing shoes, and I rose up in my heels just a little bit. Like you couldn't see it because I was wearing shoes, but like inside of my shoes, I got on my tiptoes, and I was able to just enough to get over the line of 5'6".
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, I said, no, I'm 5'6". I'm 5'6". And I would just like, wait, hold on. In these shoes, I can actually say that I'm 5'6". I'm 5'6", guys.
Yeah,
I'm 5'6".
Yeah, you go
I'm
off
5'6".
They let you through, so I'm 5'6".
Yeah.
Right?
And then I remember like hearing something about like a modeling audition or whatever, like you had to be 5'7". I legitimately, truly believed I was 5'6". And I thought, oh, what's one more inch? I'm 5'7". I'm 5'7". And like, yeah, I could totally go say I'm 5'7". That's like basically the same thing. That's like an inch. That's like my hair.
Yeah.
And then like going to the doctor for my checkup a month later where they actually measure you. And I'm like,
5'5".
yeah. And she's like, how tall are you? I'm like 5'7". No, you're like 5'5.5". Like I was still growing, but like I really, truly believed because I told myself enough times. And I was like, did I shrink?
Mm-hmm.
What happened? And that happens a lot, even in a lot of the different filters that we might be using.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's more of like I see a lot of women doing it, but like you don't even realize, like you think that it's subtle. Like some of these lies that we tell ourselves are so subtle that we don't even realize that we keep on building on top of them. In some cases, I do think that those lies can be helpful. For example, you, my friend, you are worthy of that stage.
Yeah.
And you do need to tell yourself that until you believe it, but not because it's a lie.
Right.
It's just that you don't believe it yet. So you think that it's a lie, but you need to believe that.
Yeah.
And so we need to be really, really careful with, okay, what is something that I need to simply believe or that has not been my truth yet versus what am I lying about myself because I'm doing it because I want to be accepted by somebody else, or I want to be included. And that's where I love where the creator economy is going, because we're not just seeing people rise who are the best or the brightest. Like we're seeing the average, extraordinarily average, who are getting and building those communities, and they are students of their own experience. And we're getting to see what day one looks like versus what we used to be inclined to, which is you only see the overnight success.
Right.
You only see whereas like, and I think it's most difficult for a lot of us getting on video because we're maybe really successful in something else. So we don't want people to see that. And so one of the things that I actually did this year was I told my followers, like, I'm going to start making content in Spanish. I'm going to give a keynote in Spanish this year, which for those of you who don't know me, like my last name is Ugarte. Technically it's Ugarte, but I've always joked like I'm fluent in Spanglish. My dad always makes fun of me because I was the only Mexican in my Spanish class growing up and I got a B. And like, so again, fluent in Spanglish, like it's not my first native like language. People in other countries would be like, who, like to them, the equivalent of who is this white girl, even though I have olive tan skin, like that for them. And I said, no, this is the reason why I want to do it. You look at me and you go, oh, but Giselle, you're such a good speaker. Oh, but Giselle, like you've been doing this for forever. Okay, fine. Let me put it in a different language that's not going to be perfect, that I'm going to probably get words wrong. I'm going to stutter. I'm going to get the tense wrong. But I want to prove to you that even if you are imperfect, especially if you are imperfect, you can see the effort and you can see the heart and the message will translate. And that's exactly what I did. So in June, I actually went to Spain. They offered to give me a translator and I was like, nope. I'm going to do it. And yeah, I got a Spanish teacher, but I didn't have a script word for word. Legitimately the night before, my dad, who's my number one fan, biggest cheerleader, I was like, give me some advice, Dad. And he was like, are you sure you want to do this?
Even he was like,
like projecting his own fears.
Want real advice?
I was like, yes. I was like, I am. And it was rated the highest, like that one of the highest rated speeches of the whole conference.
That's awesome.
But because
Wow.
I was not perfect,
Yeah.
like people were able to, and I think it's so important that those of us who are the high achievers, we don't forget to show what those day ones look like. We don't lose sight of what some of those new experiences look like, because I believe that we owe it to our communities to allow for them to be a part of the journey. Like you're talking about, I don't know if I'm worthy to be on this stage. Go anyway.
Yeah.
And be nervous and sweat and mess up and have the technical difficulty happen. Like, great. And show your people, like, look, I did it.
Yeah.
Like, and I did it scared. And I was brave. And I'm going to give you all of the value that I can, so that you can be in this position one day, if this is what success looks like for you. Because we don't do that enough. And professionals now who are doing it backwards, who are doing the professional first, creator second, we're doing our community a disservice if we don't talk about the twisted journey and the heartbreaks and the rejections and the fall on your face moments that it took for us to get there.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I've always lived by, like, if I'm uncomfortable, I'm growing. Right? If I'm comfortable in every situation and everything that I'm doing, there's no growth in that to me. And so I always like take on the challenge of like, yeah, I don't know about this, but I'll do it. I was like that because I played basketball all the way up into college. And I remember being my first time playing like in high school in front of hundreds of people. And I can remember feeling the butterflies right before you run out. And then the moment I run out, it's muscle memory. Everything's fine. I'm as comfortable as I could be. Right. And so I tell myself that with everything else too. Like, as long as you prepare, right, your muscles will kick in and do what you need it to do. And so now, like, speaking in the moment, like in the present time, it's interesting to see people try to figure out how to be good on video. Right. Rather than just be good and be themselves, right? Like I always say, authenticity will lead to your authority, right? And so just be authentic with what you're saying, right? Talk about what you know. Don't get on here talking about stuff you don't know, right? Like even, I've had guests on that are in the real estate space. I'm not a real estate expert, right? I work for one and I collab with a bunch of them, but I'm not an expert in that space. So Justin's not about to ask you a bunch of questions and a bunch of numbers about it, right? I just don't have it in me, right? We're going to focus on what I'm really locked in on and what I study myself so that we can have that conversation. And so that's just another piece of advice when you're in those uncomfortable situations, right? I have learned too from the places I've been and the speaking, engagements that I've had, that they're not coming for me to be the expert. Right? They're coming just for the value that I have in experience. Right. And then some people are only coming just because they want to be held accountable. Right. Right. And so it's like, yeah, like give them those pieces, right? Because that stuff, right? Like, I don't have to get up here and guess. I know that stuff. And so when I talk about what I know, I find myself more comfortable. And so that's advice for anybody that's getting in front of a lens or in front of a microphone, right? Like you're not an imposter if you talk about what you know.
I mean, but here's the thing though, like easier said than done.
Yeah.
Like we said, be authentic, be yourself. Who even am I?
Yeah.
I don't know. And it's so easy to get stuck in that place of who do I want to be, or who do I think I'm supposed to be, or what do I think a real estate agent is supposed to look like, or what do I think a YouTuber is supposed to look like? I mean, my goodness, how many times do you see someone who, they come in and they want to replicate your exact set or your exact lighting because they think that's what they're supposed to have. Yeah. But to that, I say like, okay, do that. Because sometimes you have to figure out what you're not before you figure out what you are. Yeah. Or wake up and feel so exhausted and tired and go, why am I so exhausted and tired from, being around people or from making content, and then realizing, oh, I'm so exhausted and tired because I've been trying to be somebody who I'm not. Like that's what I had to do. Like if you look at my content now, I make business content. I make marketing content. A lot of my clients are real estate agents, even though I've never sold a house in my life, to which I say neither have your clients. That's why I'm a great coach for it. Talk about communication, personal development. And a lot of my audience, I would say it's about 50-50 male to female, a little bit more male to female, which for some people, they're like, what? How is that possible? You're a girl. Yeah, okay, it's 2023. Makes sense, right? Yeah. But if you look at my content 10, 15 years ago, it was 70, 80, 90% female, 13 to 17-year-old girls. I was doing makeup tutorials. I was doing outfits of the day. because for me, my comfort zone was watching beauty vloggers. I loved makeup. Typically they say, well, what can you talk about for forever? That was what I could talk about for forever, and I didn't have to share my story, so it was comfortable.
Yeah.
I felt a lot more comfortable doing demonstrations and tutorials rather than talking about my own life. Not to mention, I got so caught up in the views, and my tutorials would get more views than my day in the life content. I believed that, okay, then that means that people don't like me, or it quote unquote doesn't perform well, so I'm going to keep doing the thing that makes me get the views. And then I inevitably burnt out in the niche.
like most people do.
Hated it because I'm like, I don't even like, and I was also like I'm like, why am I trying to act like a makeup artist? Versus like, I use the same brush. I still do my makeup 15 years ago the exact same way. And I was trying to do these like green eyeliner and fake eyelashes. And anyone who's listening, you're like, I don't know what that is, Giselle. I don't do makeup. Point is, like, it was extravagant. And I was trying to be the most advanced encyclopedia of this topic, of this industry, that wasn't actually true to who I was. And so I fell on my face. I had to take a long, long, long mental break and a good hard look at myself. But I kept on going in some way, shape, or form. So I want to also remind you, this path is not linear. You're going to start, you're going to stop. You're going to start again, you're going to stop again. You might post, consecutively for a month, and then you might disappear for 3 months. And people are going to be like, don't do that. Like, you need to show up you need to go at your own pace, and what your mental health is going to allow for you to do. Is that strategically the best thing that you could possibly do? No. But I want you to not lose sight of who you are, and I want you to make sure that you don't lose yourself in your pursuit of your dreams. And if that means that you need to take a break, we were talking about before, like the things that make us uncomfortable. For me, like vacations were something that made me uncomfortable.
Wow.
Not being on social media was something that made me uncomfortable. Or I had moments throughout my life where some of you were like, I need a break from social media. If you feel like you need a break, boo-boo, take a break. But when you're taking a break, figure out why is it that you're taking a break, and what is it that you need a break from, so that way you don't then use the device the exact same way that brought you to this exact place. And maybe it's not social media for you. Maybe it is making the videos. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's a job. Maybe whatever it is that you feel like you need a break from. Like, go figure, is it because you're mindlessly scrolling? Is it because you're following people who suck? Is it because you're in comparison in a place where you're making yourself feel less than? Versus comparison is only the thief of joy when you're not aligned. In many ways, comparison is actually how we can connect. We can go, oh, damn, wait, they like the same things that I like. They're at the same level that I am. Did we just become best friends?
Yeah.
And so it's getting your mind right and your feed right. And that's how you check yourself before you potentially wreck yourself. And I say that all the time, like, even as someone who coaches content and communication, I don't post every single day. I don't advise that, and I don't do it myself. And the reason for that is I have my own intention. I have my own reason for success. I'm not trying to become the most famous viral person on the planet. I'm not trying to be clickbait. I go in with intention. I want to create relationships. I might be promoting very specific products or events or people. I go in there to lift my clients up. I want to know the culture. I want to study the psychology of it. And for that, that's the pace that works for me. And also with my 10, 15 years of experience, I know the pace that I need to go so that I'm not burning out. And so that my head is okay. And that's what works for me. I'm making great money. I have awesome businesses, some that don't at all rely on social media. For you, that could be different.
Right.
But I would rather you post intentionally and in a way where you combine the thing that you love with the thing that draws a community, with the thing that makes you feel so good and lights your heart on fire, versus the thing that slowly sucks your soul out. And we lose sight of who you are, and you lose connection to the real world. And, it could take a turn for the worst.
Yeah. And I mean, even to that, one thing that we always preach is consistency. Right? Finding what that means for you, right? How can you be consistency?
Right.
Or consistent? And that's how my initial call, my one-on-one, that's the first thing I want to know, right? Like, we'll get into like exactly what you're trying to do with your business through the social media.
Right.
But tell me, what would you be willing to commit to? Right. And so I come, like, I was a videographer, I've been a videographer for 10, 11 years now. And so I used to operate on retainers. And one way that I would keep my retainers is I would make them guarantee me a certain amount of videos. Right? I need you to guarantee me consistency because I know if we do a session and you burn out after 12 videos, I got no chance of showing you results.
Right.
Which means that you're not going to stay with me and you're not going to keep, the money's not going to keep flowing. Then I was like, yeah, but they're guaranteeing me and they're still not doing it. Right? Like they're saying it, but they're not doing it. How do I get them? So I'm just be honest with me. What are you willing to commit to? How much time? How many hours a week will you be willing to commit with me? And then I took those hours and I got as much out of those hours that I could.
Right.
And so now I'm not worried about you burning out anymore because you can do the 6 hours a week, right? That's all I need. But I know in that 6 hours I need to try to get a month's worth of content.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And so now that burnout starts to change. So it's just different strategies that we use to try to do that. But it was working. You're almost reverse engineering what you know will happen if I say I need you to post every day.
Right.
I need you to make a video every day. I know you're going to burn out. I don't even do it. And I won't ever agree to do that.
Right.
Right. And so I know if I won't do it, then you won't do it. And that's just kind of a way that we've kind of worked around trying to figure out, and again, psychology, right? Like trying to work around and make sure that we're efficient and consistent with what we're doing. I always say consistency is the only cheat code.
And I want to repeat what you said, which is consistency. It's up to you to decide what that means. Is that once a week? Is that every other week? Is that one video a week? Is that a post? Is it 3 times a week, 4 times a week? Is it the same day every week? Is it not? But and also I think it's so important to recognize what worked for you in one season of your life might not work for you in the next. And it's constantly being willing to adapt and change. And that's part of being an entrepreneur. You have to be willing to adapt and change with the environment, with the different platforms that are coming, with what's happening in your life. Like there are some seasons where I'm traveling like crazy. Like there was a month this year where I was home for 3 days. Like that's it. And then there was a month where I was home every single day. And so you just have to figure out what's going to work for you and also what's going to keep you excited. Because, especially during like prime TikTok era, you would have people making these videos complaining about their views are down or I'm so tired, I'm so burnt out. Yeah, we can tell.
Yeah.
I can feel that. Yeah. I can feel the desperation.
I'm burnt out watching it.
Right. I can feel how tired you are.
Yeah.
And that's not making me excited to be hanging out with you. Especially when all you're doing is complaining or when all of a sudden your spark has gone missing and rather than you owning it or taking a break as a human would do versus you're treating yourself like a product rather than a person.
Yeah.
And that is making it harder for me to connect with you. And also you're making me feel like I matter less because you are delivering less of that product and you're also treating me like a number now rather than someone who is so excited for you. Yeah. And so I always, always, always tell my clients, my followers, like you should take a breather. I take breathers all the time, especially since social media is such a big part of my life. I do it not only because I want to, just reset my creativity, but I do it as a stress test. Like, can my profile still live without me? Kind of like my business. Like, it's the way that I treat my businesses too. Like, if I took a break for 30 days from social media, would people still know who I am, how to find me, and what I'm about? Or is it something that it only can live when I'm very, very active there? But now all these platforms, it's awesome. You can post and your content might still be shared. For days, weeks, months on end. And or someone could come across your profile through search, through Discover page, and they might start creeping. And the best thing and what's so important about social media is the feature of copy and paste. Like it's making yourself as copy and pasteable as possible. And that I think is so important because, God forbid you get sick, something happens to you, or you want to take a vacation, allow for that to happen. And even notice when you go on vacation, are you still like obsessed, addicted to posting everything, sharing your whole life? Because newsflash, just because you didn't post it on Instagram, it still happened. It still happened. Life still happened.
Yeah.
Like it's wild that it really is a practice to have photos in your photo album that you don't share. And you genuinely have it for your own personal fulfillment and enjoyment. And so I'll find myself on vacation where I never completely disconnect from social media. I'll just take a break from posting because I do genuinely enjoy it. I want to see what my friends are doing. I do use it as programming and learning, but I will have that practice of sometimes I want those photos to be just mine. Maybe I'll share them 30 days, 90 days, 6 months later, maybe a year later. Maybe I'll never share them. But being able to be present in that moment while still documenting it because I want to remember it.
Right.
I don't believe, someone said the other day, you'll never regret taking the picture. There are so many seasons in my life where I was like, don't take the picture. I don't look cute. Or like, I feel gross right now. Or like, ugh, like you'll never regret capturing that moment.
No.
There's a lot of beauty that's in our phones
Absolutely.
and in our cameras
Absolutely.
that get too much of a bad rap because of the ways that they can be abused.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. You said something too that it struck me about the platform. And so I'm going to ask you, which platform do you feel is most vital to like your business?
Right now it's Instagram.
Okay.
And it has been for a while. What I love about it is that I am able to both nurture my community and reach and touch my community and also reach people who have no idea who I am. And I also love that, with Instagram, they rolled out a lot of these new features pretty slowly. And yeah, it's a copycat. Like stories was Snapchat first.
That's it.
All right. Like
That's
we
it.
forget that sometimes. Stories was Snapchat first.
Yeah.
And obviously Reels was TikTok first. And now they're doing longer form, which was YouTube first. But Instagram is something that we have been introduced to, and the features have been brought in slowly. They've done a great job of education. Meanwhile, about a lot of other platforms, a lot of their features are kind of like obsolete or irrelevant, or it's not really fully, totally part of the user experience. Whereas Instagram, I really do feel that the average person does use, if not consumes, all of the features.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Like I go on YouTube, I subscribe to people, but it's not the way that previously when subscribers really mattered and you were actually fully notified without having to hit the bell.
Yeah.
Or you'd get it in your inbox and you would sit there. Like a lot of people who are our age, subscriber culture is not really normal. And also at this point, like that count, it's not as relevant as it used to be. People are finding you primarily through search. There isn't a ton of community in the comments in the same way that it is on Instagram and what used to be TikTok. Now TikTok's a bunch of bots. Same thing with TikTok. TikTok is trying so hard to be everybody else when it was so awesome, when it was just pure and wholesome TikTok. And there was community in the comments, and now it's a big cluster and whatever. And so that's one of the many reasons why for me Instagram is an incredible part of my business in that it allows for me to nurture my community and also reach people who I don't know, and in a multidimensional experience where they're getting to see both real time, past time, behind the scenes, candid experiences, video, image, words. It's all there.
Yeah, and you mentioned nurturing your community. And so for me, I made a prediction, and I don't know how right I'm going to be, but I made a prediction that by next year, we will do away with those individuals that just want to post. You will not be able to grow if you post and do nothing else. Right? In the past you could do that, right? I'll post one a day and I'll see some lead. You know what I mean? It'll happen for me eventually. That's going to be gone. And I believe too as well that the communicators, the good ones, will stand up. They're going to create that separation from the creator that just decides to make a piece and post versus the individuals that are willing to nurture their community. And so I think that's huge. I know, Instagram is your best. I believe for us here in the wealthy community, Instagram probably is the number one lead gen moneymaker. But I believe our most valuable still is YouTube. And
100%.
And I'll explain why. And they may have heard this before from me or not. But reason being, like, even this month, the last 28 days, we're 116,000 watch hours. That's just podcasts.
Right.
That's not any content that he's doing, stories or shorts, and that's just the podcast, right? And we know that if you stick around for 10 to 15 hours, we can get you to support us somehow. And so in knowing that, the short form content doesn't have as much value as the longer form content does. Because I need you to sit with me for a little bit. I need you to learn. I need you to see me, get my personality. And I always teach on something what I call know, like, and trust. All right. We know what the no is. We got to get the views. We got to get the subscribers. We got to get you to see us. Right. And so for the longest, the previous 2 years, we played that quantity game where it's like, hey, you can't cut your phone on without seeing Ryan. Right. Like that's our goal. And so we knew that would get the no out there. We're creating the awareness by just overloading you with content. But we know that, not everybody enjoys, the flood of content, right? Some people will not stay. But I know that people that enjoy the value, they'll stay. And so then we move into that like phase. And what really gets people to like you is everything else outside of the value. Right, exposing life, like the lifestyle, exposing the family, exposing what food I like to eat, and all those things that are broader, and pieces of content versus the niche content that got you to know me. And then when eventually after you spend that amount of time, because once you got to know and you got to like, you spent some hours with me already, and then you trust me, and that's when I can actually offer a product to you, or I can offer some form of help to whatever your problem is, right? And then that content that does provide a solution, it becomes very effective at that point. And so, it just goes back to like what platform, when I'm asked that question, I'm like, you got to figure out what you are trying to do with your business or what you're trying to do with your personal brand. Right. Because that's going to determine which one will be better. Mm-hmm. Not everybody necessarily needs to podcast, but podcasts may be easier for you to get a whole bunch of clips.
Right.
Right. So you just got to figure out what strategy works, right? You may not be the individual that can script something or come off the top and talk directly into that lens, because everybody knows that that's awkward, right? Like everybody knows, and not everybody is the great speaker that can just do that. Right. But if I have a conversation, that might be a lot easier. And then I could just clip a bunch of clips from that. But determining whether or not, or which platform is the best, is going to be based on what outcome you want.
And also the experience that you enjoy.
Yeah.
And Instagram starting to do longer form content. I've been seeing like 20 plus minute videos pop into my feed. TikTok trying to do longer form content. But the other thing so I appreciate what you said. You just said Instagram is highest with conversions. YouTube brings so much value. Mm-hmm. So I don't make YouTube videos anymore. I know I need to.
Yes, you do.
And it's part of the Q4 goals.
Okay.
I was burnt out for a minute, and now we're ready to come back and better than ever. But here's the thing. I'm still making money from videos that I made more than 10 years ago.
Yep.
So even if you're not promoting a product, there's the ad revenue there, which I'm sure the model's going to change. But as of right now, it is the highest margin over any other platform.
Yeah.
And I think it was Sean Cannell who said, like, it's the ATM machine that just keeps on giving you money no matter what, as long as you are approved to monetize from those types of ads. And that's where it can be extremely lucrative for someone who's making some of those longer videos or podcasts, which people still underestimate that. Mm-hmm. Top place to listen to podcasts is where you can watch them. Right. And more podcasts are adding videos to it. And then from there, work smarter, not harder, take some of those shorter clips from it. Yep. And so I'm fully aligned and agree with you there.
No, 100%. And that's why I do think like the communicators are going to stand out in the next couple years, like for sure. Because I just don't believe that the popcorn content will be as valuable and not as like we're moving into this space, right? And so I've watched the last 3 years where everybody either is trying to start a business, and I'm watching them like they're just regurgitating what they're getting fed. And the education space is continuing to grow, right? Like there's more and more educators out there every day. And they're actually growing following, which means that people are listening. People are watching, right? They're paying attention. And so you're going to have to be good at it, and you're going to have to practice it, and it's going to have to be meaningful. And I do think that everybody has that ability.
I believe everyone has the ability to communicate, but not everybody has the ability to get out of their own head and allow for themselves to be authentic.
Yeah.
It's really difficult. It really, really is. And one of the jokes that I say is, it took me 23 years to start liking myself. Mm-hmm. And so it was a struggle to convince myself, to start liking myself and to understand that not everyone's going to like me. Most people, the idea of someone not liking you feels like the end of the world.
Yeah.
And it is. I talked to Ryan yesterday on his podcast where he talked about how he's been following his dreams and I'm following mine. But I just posed the question, do you know how rare that is? Mm-hmm. That you are following your own dreams.
Yeah.
You're not doing it for someone else. You're not doing it to get back at another person. Occasionally we have those chips on our shoulders. We want to compete. We want to get better. But I joke, like, one of my competitive advantages is that I had 2 parents who loved me and who made me believe like I could do anything. So that's not to say, though, that they didn't project their own fears onto me, that they never gave me unsolicited advice, or brothers who were protective of me, and especially when it came to content creation, sharing myself, sharing my vulnerabilities, talking about mental health, especially being, someone who's Mexican. And in our culture, you don't do that. Like, you just don't. And so, like, not allowing for all of the other voices that have shaped you to allow for you to be yourself and to figure out what parts of yourself you feel comfortable sharing versus not. I do believe that those people who are just like, you mentioned like the BBL or whatever, I do think that they will have less value and their followers will have less value, but I don't think that they'll disappear. Because I do feel like there is an illusion there that people will consistently be addicted to.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Or that they don't want to go that deep. Like, most of the world is not that deep. We go to social media church and they're like, what is this woo-woo God stuff, huh? But that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, the people who you want to attract, you will attract. The people who you want to repel or who aren't ever going to vibe with you anyway. It's the same thing in real life.
Yep.
Like, you're going to lose friends. You're going to lose followers. You're going to outgrow friends. You're going to outgrow followers. That is more than okay.
Yeah.
That means that you are becoming more of who you are meant to be. And you are becoming more sure of yourself. Yeah. And you're stepping into your power because you don't need the validation of all those people. You believe in quality over quantity. And you know the message that you want to share with the world. And those who aren't aligned, you can differentiate what's true and what's not.
Oh, that's good. Well, Giselle, are there any other like foreseeable changes that in the future of the social media marketing space?
Here's the thing. Like, I've been giving the same advice for 10 to 15 years. Like, at the end of the day, it is all about communication, connection, and consistency.
That's good.
And honestly, community. So I really believe if you are not taking your relationships offline, you're missing out. Like, you're missing the point completely.
Yeah.
Like, if you are not making friendships, making connections, finding mentors, finding jobs, finding inspiration, you're missing out, because how wonderful it is that just with our phones that you can meet some of the most incredible people who you otherwise maybe never would have met in real life. And you can learn from them and you can feel like you know them. And is that the same thing as being in person? No, but it's still enriching your life in some way, shape, or form. And I would also say to make sure that you take those lessons offline. Because there are a lot of you who you've been listening to podcast after podcast after podcast. And I said this at the beginning of the episode. I'm going to say it again, so write it down. And you trick yourself into thinking that you're being productive because you filled that time with a lesson or you have the dopamine rush of education. But are you actually implementing it? Is it actually pushing you forward? Like, one of my businesses is called Action Forward Communication. And where that came from was realizing that there were so many days where I felt so productive or so tired or, oh my God, I haven't stopped moving. But I would look down and I hadn't moved. I felt like I was on this hamster wheel. Like, I was just going around and around and around. And I was exhausted in starting so many projects and not finishing versus taking more intentional and productive steps that were actually going to push me, my business, my revenue, my relationships forward. And so I would ask you the question, what is the next action forward step that you're going to take to push yourself in this creator journey forward? Is it listening to another podcast or is it recording your own?
That's good.
Is it watching another video or is it making that phone call? Yeah. Really thinking about what is that? And I want to know what it is. And I want to see those receipts. Again, not the receipts of buying my products. If you want to, you can. There's not a lot. You're in good hands. But I would rather see your receipts of implementation.
Yeah.
Giselle, I made the video. Oh my God, Giselle, I made the video. I didn't use a filter. Giselle, I asked this guest onto my show. I made the YouTube, I started the channel, I started the business, I, left the job, left the relationship, set the boundary with my family. Like, what was the action forward thing that you did so that you could get rid of that distraction and push yourself forward?
So good. So good, man. I hope they was writing stuff down.
I hope so.
Into this, right? Well, I'm going to give you the floor and allow you to tell everyone where they can find you, where they can reach you.
Yeah, I'm Giselle Ugardi, and I'm most active on Instagram. The DMs are always, always open, and I love hearing your stories. And if there's anything that you want us to go deeper into, whether it's on my content, maybe I'll come back in December. Please, please, please don't hesitate to ask, because this community really cares about you, and you're the source of all of it.
Yeah.
So be vocal and create the community that you want to attract.
Absolutely. All right. This has been another episode of Wealthy Creator. Thank you all for tuning in. Look forward to seeing you next time.